I think that, ooh, that is absolutely on. Well, thank you very much. And as we said, my name is Quinn, and I'm the CEO of Quin, formerly known as Women in Need. And we are the largest provider of shelter to homeless families in New York City, and the largest provider of supportive housing to homeless families in New York State. We have 11 shelters at the moment. I say at the moment because we're working with Commissioner Banks to make sure we all fulfill the mayor's call for 90 new shelters. That's about 5,000 people a night, give or take, of which half are children. Now, I think we're all aware generally, notwithstanding the good efforts of the city, and I mean that sincerely, that over the past 10 years, we've seen family homelessness go up 88% in the city of New York. And we've seen the overall number of people in shelter be at an all-time high. I don't think, notwithstanding that many in this room know the 88% number, that most New Yorkers know. And I'll be honest, I didn't before I got this job, and I should have, having been in government, that 70% of the people in shelter right now are families with children. 25% of the people in shelter in New York City are 5 years of age or younger. I've been at Quin a little over 2 years, and we've, since I started there, began kind of calling and characterizing our families as the forgotten face of homelessness. And I want to credit, again, the Department of Homelessness for changing that. In the shelter announcement, it's the first time we can see in the city's history that a set-aside was specifically for families. But it's critical that we change this, because if people don't know this fact, then the policies and the funding won't go to the majority of those in need. So at Quin, to quote my 91-year-old Irish Catholic father, geez, I thought it was just 3 hats and a cots in these homeless shelters, but it's not. And he's right, though said somewhat inarticulately, as he oft does. We really believe our work at Quin is not just to put a roof over somebody's head for the 14 months or so they're with us in shelter. And it's not just to make sure they're domiciled when they leave Quin. It's to break the cycle of homelessness from an intergenerational perspective and make sure people do not return to shelter. Why do I say that? Because a majority of our young people, our children, when they come to Quin, have already experienced homelessness and some type of unstable housing. 2, why does it have to be intergenerational? Because a homeless child is twice as likely to be a homeless adult. And I want to make sure I get some of these statistics right. 1 out of 8 children in the New York public school has been homeless in the past 5 years. Homeless youth are 3 times more likely to commit suicide. 40% of homeless teens struggle with depression. And the list goes on in all of the bad categories. Being survivors and victims of intimate partner violence, getting pregnant, getting someone pregnant, much higher rate for homeless children. So we need to, and this is one of the things we really hold dear at Quin, that we need to have services for mom. I say mom because 9 out of 10 of our families are headed by a single mother. But we also need to have comprehensive services for the children, specifically targeted to the children in a trauma-informed care, with a trauma-informed care method. Otherwise, the trauma of homelessness, of domestic violence, 80% of the mothers at Quin have experienced domestic violence in their adult lifetime, which to me was a shocking addition of that word, 80%. So the trauma of repeated homelessness, of seeing and being in a household with domestic violence, of seeing a parent with mental health challenges, substance abuse, et cetera, those are traumas in children that if we do not address separately and distinctly from the issues of mom and the family, will foster and will recreate homelessness, which if we want to get these numbers down, and I also want to be clear, I give you a 10-year number to get to an 88% increase. This solution is not tomorrow. we can make significant difference that will get us out of the crisis. But let's not fool ourselves that this is going to be a quick turnaround. It's a complicated problem. The top two reasons people come to us at Quin are eviction, which is obviously a financial issue, and domestic violence, a very complicated issue. So we all need to be, and I know you are, in for the long haul. Let me talk about our moms for 1 second. Our moms are predominantly women of color. The vast majority are African American and then Latino. The overall racial breakdown in shelter is about 58% African American, 31% Latino, and then the rest kind of a mix of 1 or 2% Asian, about 7% white. In WIN, that's for the whole system. In WIN, the percentage who are African American are much higher than that, in the 70s, and then we have Latina after that. When our moms come to us, and remember, top two reasons, very close, almost identical, eviction, domestic violence, 51% are working. They're working and they can't pay the rent. That's why, and also close to 50% come to us with a high school diploma or a GED. So these are women who want to be employed, are employed, have an education to start from. But given all of the responsibilities of staff in shelter, to make sure we're dealing with psychosocial needs, to do a mental health impact, connect with services, to get housing, to get all your benefits on, et cetera, we need a separate team of people who can seize on that work potential. And why does it matter? Because we need people to be able to pay the rent when they get out of shelter. Curiously, one of the categories we chart at WIN is self-pay apartments, right? People have gotten jobs and can pay for it. And when we were going over last year's data for Robinhood, and I want to recognize one of our great funders, Robinhood Bea, who's here, and they like data. You know what I'm saying, people, if they love a data. 97% or 95% in the 90s of people who had self-pay apartments were still stably housed 2 years out of shelter. So, thank you very much. Overall, a year out of shelter, 85% of those we placed into housing outside of shelter, 85 or 86%, are still housed a year later. But not in the 90s for self-pay, wow, that underscores the importance. So at WIN, we've put together, with some support from the city, I don't mean this as a criticism, but a lot of support from corporate entities and philanthropies, what we call an income building program. Don't call it a job training program. Our moms will tell you they have a job. They know how to get you, they want to build their income. And in that, we do it differently than traditional workplace development. We need, education is obviously the great equalizer in workplace development programs, but we don't have time for you to go through a whole education program before we put you in a job. So we work with people, what skills do they have? What likes do they have? Where have they worked? Where are the open jobs and the job sectors that are going to continue to grow? Then we partner. We just got an agreement from the Hotel Trades Union. They're going to take 12 moms every 6 months and train them and place them as maids in 4- and 5-star hotels in the city of New York. Now that's the kind of additional service I'm talking about that's going to help us break the cycle of homelessness intergenerationally. Because in my opinion, the number of people in shelter is a statement. It's a fact. It's not a condemnation or a glorious moment if the number goes down, in my opinion, as it relates to the city of New York or providers. It is. But what can be different is the number of people who come back for a second or third time. And I believe that's really what, as funders and advocates and providers in the city, we should judge ourselves by. Making sure we're doing work intergenerationally with children can get that number down. Make sure we're building work opportunity, following up with clients can all get that number down. But none of this can simply happen from the city of New York. And I want to recognize in the 2+ years I've been at WIN, the city has upped the amount of money they have given shelter and added flexibility in how we can use it, which has been a game changer. And Raisa Rodriguez, our head of policy and planning at WIN, is shaking her head. But there's never going to be enough money from the city of New York. Never. Because they have so many other competing interests as well. And that's where Groups like Quin raising private money from individuals matters, and philanthropic partnerships matter. Because again, we know we have a homeless crisis. What most people don't know is there's two faces of that homeless crisis right now in New York City. That of a 4-year-old child and that of a 30-something working single mother. That reality is now becoming clear in the city, and we need to make sure that the additional, more holistic resources that accept, yes, where someone is without blame, but recognize in many of the situations these families have the ability to be somewhere else, that the services and funding follow that reality that is now much more in the light of day. And trust me, if it doesn't, Mom will be back, and her children will be back as homeless adults. So it's amazing to have this conversation this morning. I want to thank Philanthropy New York, because the more we're talking about families and youth, the more we're making sure that the families at Quin are forgotten no more, and that really is the real goal of our work. So thank you.